Tango 1 at the top, we are at Papa Cuckoo. 10-4, Tango 1, you have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple.
You're ruining the Tango 1 podcast.
Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
Welcome to the Tango 1 podcast, everybody. I am Tony Smith. I'm a retired cop and tactical team leader. I am the owner of the Garage Gym and Tango 1 Solutions. And my mission every week is to challenge you to live the tactical life by creating an immediate action plan against your problems and your weaknesses. Simply put, we want you to do more and be more. Today, I am joined by, I'm going to call you friend. I guess we've known each other for so long without ever meeting, but Andrew Tracy. Andrew is the co-conspirator of the Adult PE Life. He's, in my opinion, he's been the king of adaptation for fitness in a very, very long time. And we're going to, tap into that a little bit today. He's also a pizza connoisseur and a fitness editor of Men's Health and a recent cover boy for Men's Health too, which is pretty impressive in the UK. Yeah, let's start with there. Like, I don't even know how we actually know each other. I think it's just through Instagram, through Jim Jones. Were you affiliated there?
I think that's the connection. I've always been really kind of heavily influenced by Jim Jones, and later on kind of Mark doing his own thing. And I think that's literally it. I think the early days of Instagram, I just wanted to connect with kind of as many like-minded people as possible to kind of curate a feed that I guess was as positive as possible and as kind of tuned in and aligned with what I was thinking and doing at the time. And I think that's probably it.
Yeah, I think the same for me because we started in the garage and a lot of kind of the same values you have. We do have a formal gym now, but it's been built from like the organic and to not feel like a real gym. And you are the guy who like preaches being outside the gym and you're not your gym membership and all those things. And I think we just had a lot of the same values and over the years shared a lot of your posts, and I know you shared a lot of mine. It's pretty cool to actually, this is the first time we've ever spoken in person though. So I appreciate you coming on here, man.
Yeah, no, I massively appreciate being asked, man. And I just want to stop and just rewind a little bit. The intro you did there was just absolutely impeccable. As someone who is an amateur, kind of at the beginnings of handling his own podcast or a podcast with someone else, to hear someone just reel that off like that is truly inspiring.
Well, if you listen back, I am like, they make fun of me I stopped reading 2 ads. So we'll see. I am the worst at reading in these ads. I mess them up every week. I don't like the reading part. I try not to mess up the guest stuff. So that's why I read it. But yeah, thank you very much. When did you start? You started a podcast recently. Let's start there. Tell me about it.
So a company that I work very closely with, Bulldog Gear, who are they're a kit manufacturer over here in the UK. I work very closely with them on various projects, and my company actually goes out and my family business kind of goes out and builds the gyms for them as well, which is ironic because my kind of whole mantra is you are not your gym membership. And last year we kind of found ourselves in the position of actually building gyms for people, which seems sort of counterintuitive, but it works. So yeah, I've kind of started that podcast with Bulldog and just getting some interesting characters on there. We've only been going a little while, but I think it's nice. It's nice to have these conversations. I like to have them both ways. I think it's great, and I think we're privileged to kind of be alive in a time where we can do this. And so many of us have got access to these conversations or are privy to these things and these sort of dialogues that once upon a time, you wouldn't kind of have had access to or be able to listen in on these conversations. I think I actually find that whole thing just amazing. And I feel like the future generations are kind of blessed in the sheer volume of information they're going to have access to, and these conversations and dialogues and stories and anecdotes that were kind of might have been a bit niche, or you would, the guys like us who like we were just saying, you have that kind of maybe mutual connection of enjoying Jim Jones style of programming, and we never would have had the chance to hook up if this format kind of didn't exist. But now we do, and I feel like that just grows things organically and allows ideas to propagate so much faster than they would if you're over there and I was over here and we're both doing our own thing and neither of us are any the wiser. So I genuinely feel blessed to be able to do this, be able to come and talk to you and be able to go away and talk to other people kind of on my own gig. I find it fantastic.
Yeah, it's come so far, and this was one of the great things that came out of COVID for myself personally. This is my favorite day of the week, and I'm doing 3 this week, is the podcast, because of the connections and then just speaking with like-minded people. And the idea is to, for our listeners to get a lot out of it, and I know that they do, but I can't believe I've underestimated how much I get out of this. Like, there'll be things that come from our conversation today that I will apply to whether it's my training or how I schedule my business or my personal life. It comes out every week. It's been pretty cool. And I don't think we prefaced this. This is the first time I've gone overseas with somebody. Where are you exactly talking to us from now?
I'm in the UK. I'm about probably about 20 minutes from London here. Yeah. So I mean, everybody knows London, don't they? So
Yes.
just on the outskirts of London.
Oh, it is pretty amazing, and it's crystal clear, which is awesome. So in this episode, man, I'd like to talk about training with minimal gear. I think that's super applicable right now, and it's kind of what you do. I want to talk about making the most of the circumstances, find out a little bit more about the adult PE thing that you've been really pumping out, and then talk just more about your story, which is kind of where I want to start. So when you, if I remember right, you said something on a comment, and then I got the intuition that you were building a gym. And then it became not a gym. It was more of a gym anywhere, basically, without a gym without walls, really, and without all of the equipment. So how did you go from, I think you started a commercial gym to basically, I'm going to call it this almost nomad fitness trend that you're doing here?
So I started working in my first gym when I was 16, and I had no interest in fitness at the time, really. I knew nothing about it, hadn't played any organized or team sports growing up. So my background was I was very green. I knew nothing about sports, nothing about fitness. And I just took this job at a gym, kind of behind the counter for a job, literally, for a paycheck. And that is it. That's as simple as it was. I got really into it. I was so kind of passionate about the further education. It was the first time since leaving school. No. It was the first time including school that I was actually genuinely interested in wanting to upskill and educate myself somewhere. So went through all the motions you go through, qualified as a personal trainer, etc. And I kind of saw this fairly sort of standard career trajectory of I'm going to do a little bit of PT here, and then I'm going to go and work at a better gym. And where I lived at the time was again just outside of London, just outside of a big city. So everyone kind of, most people have the kind of same, I guess, kind of idea that if you're going to make it big, you move to London and you get your job there or whatever. So I started working in big commercial gyms in kind of the financial district of London. So very kind of wealthy clientele, because that seemed like the right thing to do, I guess. If you're as a young lad, I felt like that would be the path to riches or whatever it was I cared about at the time. And I just found myself just being really burned out professionally and with fitness in general, because it was very much a commodity. And as a trainer in these big commercial gyms, you are very much a commodity, and it's about how much money you can bring in through your clients each month. And it was really putting me off of wanting to further my education in fitness. And I really didn't like that, because this is something that had come along and come into my life, and it was probably the first thing out of kind of childhood hobbies of just skateboarding and BMX and that sort of thing. It's the first thing that had come along, and I was like, I really care about this thing. This is an avenue I want to be involved with for the rest of my life. And the fact that I was kind of really disdaining it, I'd want to get out off the gym floor as quick as possible. I was in this position because I was working at, I worked at a few different commercial gyms, but they all had these further education programs. So I was in a position where I could go to seminars and I go to whatever I wanted to do to upskill, that was the big draw for me initially. And I was finding that I wasn't wanting to do this. I didn't want to do this stuff. And I kind of had to make the call of like, do I love this thing as a job, or do I love this thing as a passion? Looking back now, it wouldn't affect me in the same way now. I guess I'm older, I'm wiser, and I'd be able to separate the two in my head. And there was some personal stuff going on behind the scenes, and I decided I was going to take a bit of a career break. And did that, left. I kind of went to work in events. It was something my dad had done. So he kind of just suggested you go do some work in events. You're going to be doing a lot of traveling. It'll give you a good chance to clear your head. Seemed great. I thought I'll be back on the gym floor in 6 months. And that was 10 years ago. I don't know. So traveling for work, it was around the time, or it was during the time of when the Olympics were taking place in London, and big event. Got a lot of work there, worked myself into a really good position, kind of doing hands-on project management. So it's general labor, but in a really good sort of management position on a lot of big projects at the Olympics. And I just wasn't training anymore, which is really weird. I was now in kind of the opposite position where I had all this drive to train. And I had no time. I was leaving home at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And there were times on the Olympics where we just worked for 36 hours. And a normal day would be an easy sort of 16-hour day. And then when the Olympics finished, we went back to kind of traveling all over the country, staying in kind of crap roadside hotels. That these aren't the places that have like nice hotel gyms, And there wasn't really any tipping point, but I was kind of I still had my, what's the expression? I still kind of had skin in the game. I was still doing remote coaching. I was still furthering my education, but my own training was really at this point really non-existent. And I just thought something's got to give. And I think one day I just went outside with a piece of like old rope from work, and I went under the fire exit stairway of the hotel, and I just started doing an AMRAP of just push-ups, pull-ups on the fire exit kind of balustrade, and some skipping. And afterwards I felt great. I felt amazing. And I sat down and I kind of considered how lucky I was to have the education and background I did in fitness, and how I could now apply that to my current situation. And then it kind of really became an experiment of curiosity. It was like, how far can I push this thing with how little? Like, how many kind of classic programming modalities, etc., can I adapt to work in my situation? And the more I kind of got into it, the more I kind of felt a little bit of responsibility, because I'd see these other guys I worked with who maybe would want to do a similar thing, but they weren't fortunate enough to have the training background I did, or the programming background, or the education, the qualifications. And I thought, well, can I make something structured from this? And I guess it kind of became like a mantra that I hear and I repeat in my head a lot, is the old, there's more than one path to the top of the mountain. And I kind of realized that a lot of people are traveling this kind of, I go to the gym, I do classes, I do the traditional way that's sold to us of how to get in shape or how to achieve whatever it is your goal is. And I was looking at these people I'm with, and they had no way of getting on this path to the top of the mountain, right? And I'm thinking, well, if I can find a good path for us, for people like us, for people in this situation, and kind of just hold the torch up, and if anyone wants to follow, then great, and then so be it. And it just went from there, really. And I began accruing the odd bit of kit when I was curious about something, or there was something specific I wanted to do, be it a competition or be it something body composition related. And yeah, I can't really imagine any other way of training now. I mean, this year's been weird. I've actually been blessed to have quite a lot of gym access, which has been odd for me in a time. I probably have my most gym access this year in a time when everyone else has been kind of locked down.
You're doing the opposite. I think you said a couple interesting things there. Like one that's applicable to anybody. Like, it's not just fitness people that are listening to our podcast. Is that you said basically where you were making that decision? Was it the passion or was it the platform really that was the decision? That was the same decision for me to leave the policing. Like, my passion is to to help people, and I just changed the platform. And you were helping people in the commercial setting. You didn't love it. Same with me in the policing. And then, you make that decision to leave it. And I think that's incredible. And, I the same like kind of stuff that you're talking about. When I was on the SWAT team, we were working all those like crazy hours, long shifts, and you had to get some fitness in. One, we were relied on to be, bigger and stronger and faster, but also just to keep your mindset. Like a lot of how people right now, like when we're tied in on a project for 18, 20 hours, 2, 3, 4 days in a row, you get stir crazy. Like people are now during COVID and, going out to like push a truck or, do some, like you said, some pull-ups off of like a railing or a park, swing set, anything we had to do to kind of get some training in, or even just like carrying each other. Sometimes that became like the fitness, and then making it kind of fun and creative. And I certainly look at your Instagram when I'm looking for ideas for my own training in the backyard, how I could cleverly use some things. That's one of the things I really like about what you've done is like you really dabbled in so many different things, like from running to CrossFit to strongman. I think you've even done some powerlifting stuff. What are some of the events you've done?
I've competed in a couple of strongman events. I mean, competing might be overselling it a bit because I didn't, I'm like 80 kilos, whatever that is in pounds, like 180 pounds soaking wet. But I've done some endurance events, done an ultra duathlon, which was really kind of true to my kind of "you are not your gym membership" ethos, if you like, because it was during the first lockdown here in the UK. I was supposed to be flying out to do an Ironman in Greece, and then all air travel was cancelled. And I was going to do the Ironman because I wanted to complete an Ironman. I'd been training for it for a little while, and all the airfare was kind of cancelled. But I was also doing it to write an article for the mag, for Men's Health. And now we had this big like 4-page gap in the mag that was going to be this Ironman write-up, and I ended up doing an ultra duathlon, but it had to be done under the full, UK lockdown rules, which meant wheeling out a Concept 2 bike into my garden, completing the bike portion of the ultra duathlon on the bike, and which is fine. That's easy. And then competing the run portion in laps, kind of around the perimeter of where I live, which is like a 200 meters square.
That's a mind fuck.
Yeah, and I had a clicker clicking off laps. I can't remember the exact distance. It was the same. We figured it out to be the same as the London Ultra Duathlon Championship. So I had some, I had some times I could compare to how the guys had done there. It ended up taking like 6 hours, but 6 hours of running laps around your house it's a different. Given that I was training and I was kind of really looking forward to and psyching myself up for running and cycling across these like beautiful scenic cliff faces in Greece. And then I was literally in March or April, I think it was. The weather was fairly fine. It was like Easter time, just doing these laps, just around my own house. So it was definitely different. I'd say it was a bigger mental challenge, and for that, I'm thankful for that. I've done some other long distance stuff, 170-mile relay race, some CrossFit. I've done a few CrossFit comps that are out and out CrossFit, and a few kind of how could I put it? They're like functional fitness competitions, but they're not specifically CrossFit. They're much more accessible in terms of a lack of Olympic movements and keeping gymnastics, much less skill stuff, but it's all engine, engine strength, that kind of thing. Done pretty well in some of them. I'm not a particularly competitive person, like at all. As I say, I didn't do any team sports or anything like that growing up, so that's never something that's been a part of my mindset. But I am kind of really curious just to see how well I can do at these different things, especially kind of back previous to pre-COVID, when I was training out of the back of my van in fields at work. I was always really curious to see, like, how well can I do in this competition given these circumstances. And it came down to things like, I went to do it was a CrossFit comp, out and out CrossFit comp. Everyone that was competing there trained at a box. And I bought like this secondhand rowing machine, Concept 2, which I could collapse down and chuck in the van. And it would literally get to like 10 o'clock in the morning at work when the boys would stop for their first like coffee of the day. I would just open up the back of the van, pull the rower out and just do my WOD there, wherever I was. Like, I'd just take my work boots off and train. And I was just really curious, like, how I kind of looked at it like, if I can push this experiment as far as I can, how can anyone possibly say, like, oh, this doesn't work, or this isn't optimal, or that's okay for just a little while, or that will just tide you over. If I'm going and I'm placing like 5th in like national, or like these pretty big CrossFit competitions, out of the back of my van with a barbell or a couple of dumbbells, some rings, and that was it for me. It was trying to see how, I don't want to say lead by example, because it was never, I wasn't trying to exemplify anything. But I guess working backwards, I did have that kind of idea in my head of the more I can do and the more I can prove is possible with, when the chips are down, the better.
Yeah, I really think a lot of people get way too hung up in the numbers of, numbers are a great measuring tool. You can get your progress in there, but for me, and I think this carries over from my law enforcement background, but I really think it applies to just being a parent and a dad at this point, is like, what can you do getting out of bed every day? Like, can I leave this desk right now and, put on a bunch of gear, go up some stairs and smash a door in, was my old day? Or right now, could I sprint to the backyard because my kid just got hurt playing on the swing, and run him in over my shoulder and do what I have to do? I think it's like, that is kind of the purpose. And that is, you have to perform your best no matter what the circumstances are. And I think that's where people get caught up in like those numbers. Like, when I'm going to do a deadlift PR, I trained for that thing for, 3 months, and that is my high end. That doesn't mean I can do it again 2 months later. It's just, what can I do? And there's some certain standards I think people should hold themselves accountable to. So I'm going to take time out. Now you put all the pressure on me. I'm going to try to read this ad in without tripping over my words. So
I'm going to lean in.
Okay, right in there. So you hear me. All right. So this episode and every episode of Tango One Podcast is brought to you by Stephen Kidd Financial Advisor. Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized for you and your family? And will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? When you work with Stephen Kidd, your local Edward Jones financial advisor, he focuses on what's important to you. You'll work together and use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. And you'll partner to help your strategy stay on track. I was so close. Contact Stephen Kidd today at 519-734-8599. That's 519-734-8599. Edward Jones, member, Canadian Investor Protection Fund. I was so close. So close.
Spot on. Absolutely spot on. I wouldn't be able to do that.
So you've taken this, your fitness, your whole, your gym membership, getting outside. Your ethos kind of matches you're also not your modality, right? Like how you talked about, you've gone from CrossFit to power lifts to, ultra marathons or dual marathons, all these different things, biathlons. It's pretty incredible. And that really suits. And now you've made like almost I guess it is a business about it. This is parts new to me. I was researching a little bit this morning. So it's even better because now it's all educational. So what is adult PE and what are you doing with that?
So adult PE in and of itself, I guess, is just like a little tongue-in-cheek joke. Not particularly aimed at anybody, but I guess that this idea that people take competitive exercise so seriously, and it's not to say I don't, but it's kind of I guess it's a touchstone in remembering that ultimately this whole thing, this is kind of really similar to what you were just saying, but this whole thing is just adult PE, right? It's just what do you call it? Phys ed. It's just adults exercising, and you can take it as seriously as you like, but do remember that it is just fun. It's a pure luxury that you get to do this thing, and then it's kind of a phrase we throw around to kind of keep ourselves in check and remember that this whole thing isn't too serious. And that evolved into, we make clothing with adult PE slogans, etc. And adult.
I was gonna say not serious, like balls deep, not serious.
Balls deep, yeah, exactly. Yeah, balls deep. That's the Atlas ball training program. But I think I take this thing super seriously. Okay, like I ruminate on what is fitness at a philosophical level, at a physiological level, at a psychological level, all the time. But at the same time, like, you can't let it get into your head so much, like you were saying, that you're obsessed with the numbers, that if this is the biggest thing in your life, then cool, absolutely fine. But I think there's a lot of people for whom exercise takes up more room, takes up more like square footage, more floor space in their head than it rightfully should. And I think, kind of going back to what you were saying about focusing on the numbers too much, that there's a lot of people I feel like maybe even get, and this it's not necessarily anyone's fault, but paralysis by analysis, where they're too scared to even start because we've built up this whole big thing around fitness. You need the right clothing, you need the right equipment, you need to be going to the right facility. Oh God, if you deadlift without a coach watching you, your back will explode. Like we've created this whole kind of aura around fitness that I think can make it really tough for some people to penetrate. And I guess by remembering that it is just adult PE and there's room for everyone, there's room for the guy who is 100% sure he's going to the CrossFit Games. And there's also room for the people who just want to make sure they're fit enough, like you say, to run out in a hurry and snatch their kid up if something's happened. And something I think about a lot is, do we do enough as people in this game that take it really seriously to let those people know that you can start anywhere and you don't have to take it as seriously as us? And I think a lot about how many people are sat on the couch not knowing where to start because a lot of people want to make this thing look a lot more complicated than it is. And some people, I'm not saying no one's doing it there are people doing it intentionally, but I mean, on the whole, I don't think anyone's doing it intentionally. But sometimes it's really good to just take a step back and say, like, the best, for example, the greatest periodized program in history is fantastic. But also look at, if you just want to come in and shoot the breeze with the people at the gym and clang and bang some weights around and feel good about yourself and hit a general level of fitness where you can do everything you need to do in your life, that's also great. And it's cool just to start and do that, and don't be kind of put off by this idea that you need so much to start and you need to have such high and lofty ambitions.
Yeah, I think adults really lose track of the fact that there's nothing wrong with shooting for higher numbers, shooting for progress. It's that for the most part, you don't have a peak. There's no peak. There's not a competition that is going to make a difference in your life other than your self enjoyment. So if you've always wanted to run a marathon, but understand you're training for that peak. If you're just coming to be in shape every day, then you should never peak. So that's for me, the number one is consistency. And if you enjoy it, it's going to be consistent. I think like you can get so obsessed with fitness, and nutrition is another real bad one for people. If it's like negatively impacting your life because you're putting every single piece of food on a scale, like I understand there's a purpose, there's a learning purpose. We're about to run a transformation. We're going to use scales, but it's going to be just to build the habit and then let it go. And like with fitness too, like track what you're doing, but also like, I'm not going to go home and stress and add like a 1% increase unless I'm going for a competition. So I think people need to really understand the difference. And then competition within the gym is still super healthy. But I always find that the people that are only concerned with how they finished in terms of against themselves yesterday, they seem to last in our gym. The people who are like, hey man, I got a 515, Andrew, what'd you get? And you're like, 516, like, God damn it. Like that's the people that don't last. Whereas the person who looks over and says 516, you say 516, I'm like, hell yeah, man, way to go. Those people seem to stick around. And I think that, and they find their way to another gym that like breeds that like almost like overbearing competition. That's never what I want. And I think you're right with that. Is a lot of people don't start because of that. And I found with Jim Jones, the hardcore image that Jim Jones brought with it, and my SWAT background and maybe the tattoos, we were really turning a lot of people off by just the way we looked. So let alone how you talk to people makes all the difference. And we've had a lot of success just by, we have people in now just to talk and just to see the gym. And then they see like, oh, there's Karen. I know her from the bank, and I know so-and-so, they're just like me. And important that we do. So what is some advice you'd give people? It's the new year and, people are looking for different ways to train. What is some advice you might offer to somebody brand new?
I guess like kind of circling back to that whole conversation is don't put too much pressure on getting it 100% right, especially right now where kind of all traditional bets are off. You can't just, a lot of people traditionally in January would have rocked up on the first Monday to a new gym, on ramp at a new CrossFit box, whatever it is, and kind of had that guidance. And I don't knock anyone who does that. I know that it's become particularly kind of on vogue in the last few years for kind of more woke coaches and PTs to bash the idea of New Year's resolutions. But for me, it's whatever gets people going, then that's cool. We're all different and we all have different motivations, and that's kind of dissipated this year though. You don't have that option open to you. And I worry that, like we were saying, because so many people might have been led to believe you need this and you need that and you need the best coach and you need the ultimate program and all this, you need the best kit. I wonder how many people are still sat on the couch right now because they're like, oh, well, I have to wait till the gyms reopen. My advice would be don't put too much pressure on it. Every single time you work out, anytime you do anything positive for your body is a win. It really is. So it doesn't matter if that is just, getting yourself into the habit of walking 5K every day, or whether you've gone lock, stock and barrel and you've committed to a full competition kettlebell set and you're like really gunning for it. Have some loose idea of a plan, but don't beat yourself up if you are not religiously sticking to that. Especially if it's your first kind of foray into fitness. I was having this conversation with someone earlier. I'm like, I think we have this idealized image that perhaps people like you and I are like completely switched on, and we've got all our ducks in a row and we train at the exact same time every day and life doesn't get in the way. And I just said, look, there might be weeks where I train 6 times in a week, but there might be weeks where I only train twice because life has happened, or I'm just doing bits and pieces just to kind of tide me over. But life happens to all of us, and then not to let that stress you out to the point where you think, oh, I can't do this. I can't start my training because the kids haven't gone back to school yet. It's about finding what's compatible with your lifestyle, what's enjoyable. And overall, this is, I think, since coming into my 30s, this is something I've realized more and more. Overall, the thing that you're curious about the most. So what the modality or what domain or what style of exercise do you look at and say, that looks so fun, like that looks so exciting, I'm eager to find out everything about this thing. Go with that one. Like, seriously, even if it seems like I don't want to say ill-advised, but even if it's a thing that maybe doesn't seem like it will be the most efficient thing, like Zumba, no self-respecting like strength and conditioning coach is going to say that's the most efficient way to lose body fat and add muscle and increase your fitness. Like, no one's going to say that, but look, if you look at something like that, it could be anything, and you're like, I'm just really curious as to how that's going to make me feel, and go for that. Find the thing that lights your, puts the fire in your belly, as opposed to looking for the most methodical, clinical, prescribed approach and hoping that you just don't deviate off of that. And I think just not putting the pressure on yourself. You don't have to, like you said, there's no peak. You've got this body forever. You should be looking after it forever. So what are you in a rush for? If you miss a session today, if you miss a session tomorrow, you're only ever one session away from getting back on that horse. Yeah. I think particularly now, while stresses are so high that, people worried about losing jobs, losing their businesses, gyms aren't open, kids aren't at school. Like, this is a pretty high stress time for the average kind of citizen, right? Who's not used to high stress situations. Don't add another big dollop onto that of like, right, I need to make sure I've got the right clothing to training. I need to make sure that I'm hitting all of these numbers. I need to make sure that, my running training is perfectly periodized. Just do the thing you're most curious about, and do the thing that is least different from your current schedule. I think that's a big one. Like, if you set out to tomorrow completely overhaul your entire schedule to fit training in, that some people are type A personalities and they can do that, and some people just need that. They need that big rude awakening. But for the majority of people, be realistic. Where is the time in your schedule? How does your lifestyle work, and how can you incorporate fitness into that lifestyle, rather than trying to completely, at least initially, completely overhaul your entire life for a week, and then getting to the end of that week and going, you know what, I just can't stick to this. It's too much for me. So
yeah, you made a great point when you said there's like, look at it as a week. If there's 7 days in the week, obviously, if you trained 4 of those, and training for you and me might be different than the person getting off the couch, and it should be, right? It's a little bit, maybe the intensity is different, the volume, the loads we're carrying, but let's just say training, and training could be going for a walk. If you every single week end up at +1, so if you trained 4 times in 3 days, you didn't, and we're on a 28-day lockdown here and where I'm at, and in those 28 days, you end up, you're at +4. And then stretch that out over 3 months, and then over a year, you end up that year at plus whatever. And that's a lot. That's a good number. And that's just that tiny little bit of consistency and without overshooting. And then the weeks, like you said, where, yeah, man, you feel great, or you're off, or the kids are away more, you get 6 days in. And then the next week you get 2, that you're still looking at that plus minus ratio. And if you do more good than bad for your body, it can't be a bad thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the minute you kind of iron anything out too strict and you fall off of that wagon, you're then looking for the opportune time to get back on it. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to start now because it's the weekend, or whatever it is, because you're trying to really force this square peg through a round hole. Whereas if you're much more, for me, I think if you're much more malleable, if you're much more like, your exercise doesn't have to be an hour a day in the gym. But as soon as you concede that is what training is for you, you're in trouble if the gym's closed, or you're in trouble if you don't have an hour. If you can be more malleable and adaptable in your approach, you can understand that something usually always beats nothing.
Absolutely.
And then having that, like, you know, to go outside, you know, take two people, same example, that generally speaking, let's say all their training is exactly the same. So they even go to the same box. So they've got similar numbers. One of them has that real rigid approach of, you know, I train at 6 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And the other one's kind of like, I train, I just train. I just love training. I'm into it. It's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. When the gym's closed, one of those people is going to have a much easier time going, well, you know, I've got this kettlebell at home, so I'm just going to go outside and I'm just going to get in 300 swings. And the other one is sat on his couch, biting his nails, wondering when he's going to get his next training fix. And I think we've probably all been there where we fell. And I was certainly there for probably a good 6 months to a year of traveling and just being like, well, guess I just can't train anymore in my entire life because I can't go to the gym. Even though I'm like well aware of principles over methods, you know, biomechanics, movement patterns at this point. And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't need to be in the gym. Like the idea of physical culture predates gyms. Like what were guys doing back then? They weren't sat on the couch. They weren't sat on the couch going, well, I better wait for gyms to be invented.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess just being malleable and just not putting too much pressure on yourself.
For me, it's super important to. I own a gym, obviously, and I'm 2 kilometers from my closest location. Today, it's a sunny day. It's brisk outside, but my wife's really busy. And Thursdays, generally, I just love to get outside and do something. And you don't have to really. It doesn't have to look like a normal workout. I know you do a lot of EMOMs. I think EMOMs are a great way to do that. But today, with my kids running around, they want to play. So for me, it might be 10 swings between throwing the football for my boy. So he knows that, you know, he gets a 1 catch, I swing, or I do some push-ups, he gets another catch. Or, you know, you can incorporate all kinds of things if you're just, and I look forward to the not being in the gym and the being outside and, like, you know, getting out of, for me, that's my office space, is to the gym too. So I think it's important for people to just realize, like, the value of being outside. And then if you can get a little bit of physical activity in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you know, or an hour, whatever you can do and afford and make it apply. Like, I think malleable is a great word. I would have never thought of that. That must be the UK in you. The beautiful British accent makes that sound proper.
We spawned the language, so
yeah. So speaking of language, I wanted to get into this a little bit, man, because I've been like dabbling and writing a little bit, and men's health. So one, the cover boy, has that brought you any fame? Do you get like recognized at the grocery store or anything?
Well, we've all got to wear masks now, haven't we? So.
Oh, right. So you're good. You just go no shirt though. You go no shirt.
Yeah. That's what I do. I just wear the mask and the exact outfit I was wearing on the cover, and then it's really cool. I mean, when I was probably between the age of like 16 and 21. That was a huge ambition. So, like, small story, the gym I started working at was like a real spin sawdust bodybuilding gym, and there was like a magazine rack. And the way the magazines were organized, I don't know if this is by design or it's just coincidence, they kind of went in this weird order. And we had, you know, Flex magazine. Flex was at the top, which was like Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler on the cover. And then Muscle and Fitness was below, which is kind of like, the guys on there are still huge. They're still monsters, but they're more, you know, they're a bit more Hollywood. And then at the bottom was Men's Health, and it's the much kind of leaner, more natural looking guys. So I think the different guys in the gym, depending on their own body type and their own training, would read the different magazines. So me being at the time like 16, 17, 18, small guy, that was my that's the guy I wanted to look like. That was the closest proximity to me, goals wise. And I think everyone had that. In the UK, they would hold this cover model competition, and every year, I know people in the gym would get really excited about that. There was always a lot of buzz, and I'm talking about people who had no real desire to enter it, but they would always use that kind of year as a catalyst, that kind of time of year as a catalyst to diet down and get in good shape, and then kind of look at the other finalists in there and be like, oh yeah, you know, kind of I look similar to that, which is weird. But then getting to 30 I work at Mental Health. I'm the fitness editor there at Mental Health UK. And I just presumed that was a ship that had sort of sailed for me. Like, I'm never going to be on the cover. I've up until recent times, I've always had like really long hair, big beard, tattoos, and it's not their look. And I was totally cool with that. Like, I'm glad, extremely blessed and grateful to be part of the magazine and be able to put, have that platform for the things I want to say. So for that to kind of to be asked to, I don't know, maybe they were just trying to save money on the model on that month or something. I'm on payroll, so. But yeah, it was cool. It was a nice recognition, and I think what I say to people is it came at a really good time for me as well, where my in years gone by, I might have been really concerned with like getting into this cover model shape, and I might have altered my training, or I might have gone on a really kind of restricted diet or whatever. I'm talking in my early 20s. But now I'm in this position where I'm so kind of almost zen with my fitness, and I'm in a place where I kind of just want to explore what my body can do, have fun, move on to the next thing that I'm curious about, and always keep that kind of base level of GPP. But if I want to go and try an ultra duathlon, then I'm cool. I'm going to go and try that. Or if I want to try and if I want to have a phase of strongman training because I enjoy it, I'm going to go and do that. And I feel lucky that I'm in that headspace now in my life, so that when this kind of like last minute as well, like, we're shooting this cover because of COVID and everything, things kind of got pushed back and moved all around, and I didn't really know what was going on with it. I was really happy to be able to say what I look like on that cover is a representation of kind of the body I've got for life as such. Like, that's kind of just,
it's kind of like we talk about training. It's like what you get out of bed. That's like what you can do any day getting out of bed, what you look like any day getting out of bed. And I think that's pretty, that's a cool way to put it. Cause I don't think all those covers, maybe not Men's Health or just in general, looking at that when you go to the grocery store and you're looking at all those covers, that's the case. And I know that fact. I've done shoot. I've done some things where I have had to go on restrictive diets and spray myself with brown stuff and all these things to look a certain way. So I'm going to read in one more ad here, and then we're going to close things out. I got a couple bigger questions I want you to answer for me. So Murray Insurance, the episode of Tango One is sponsored by Murray Insurance and Financial Services in Kingsville. They are Southwestern Ontario's #1 ranked Desjardins insurance agency by their clients, and they are owned by our very own OGs, Ian and Kara Murray of the Garage Gym. Ian and Kara's team prides themselves in many of the highest standards that the Garage Gym has come to expect. Experts in their industry with a combined over 100 years of experience. They're the best in customer service with a claims concierge service exclusive to their clients. And most importantly to me, is they focus on community, employing local team members and investing back into Essex County on a continual basis. They are a one-stop shop for everything to protect you and your family and your assets with the best policies in the industry. If you combine your home, auto, and other insurance policies, you can get some pretty incredible rates for them. Give their team a call today at 519-733-2331, or you can get them at Team Murray Insurance on Instagram and your other social media platforms. So writing. So this is some advice. I'm finding myself, with COVID, I'm writing more, and my Instagram is not like a salesy Instagram. It's not a super educational Instagram. It's more of like my thoughts. I started as an essay. It might go out as an email, and then it gets broken down into posts, just little excerpts from that. But I find myself having trouble, like the focus. How do you do that? Do you dedicate yourself to time to write? What do you do?
Yeah, I do. I think initially if I'm just writing for myself, then I'm very sporadic, and it comes when it comes. And I do think that if you take every opportunity to, it's like anything else, it's just a knife you need to sharpen, I guess. So any opportunity I can get to do that, whether it's, writing copy for literally someone else's Instagram caption or something like that, people I work with, etc. Then I take those opportunities when they come along. When I'm writing for the mag, I think I've got a weird position at Men's Health, and that I was offered the job. You know, it wasn't a job I applied for or anything, as the fitness editor, through good relationships and having contributed to the mag for a while. But at the time, this is pre-COVID, I was still on the road with my events business, and kind of the deal was make sure the work's in every single month. You know, you don't need to come to the office, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that, which on the surface might seem a bit kind of stressful, because I'm not, you know, I'm expected to do this level of work on top of another business, and I've just got to find a way to fit it in. But I work pretty well, and I think most people a lot of people work well when they're kind of backed into a corner. And there's an expression that if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it, because they tend to be quite good at scheduling. And so I would just free blocks of time to do that. There's some people that argue that this kind of methodical, batch scheduled way of writing can interfere with the creative process. But if you've got systems, if you're writing, you're working according to systems, I don't find it that problematic. But I just set aside a couple of hours in an afternoon when I could, or in a hotel in an evening or night when I'm not training. I like to use the Pomodoro technique, which is pretty much you just work for 25 minutes consistently. Like, you don't look at your phone, you don't do anything like that. You focus purely on the project. And after that 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break. You stand up, you walk around, you kind of try and focus on something far away to get your eyes readjusted and sort of fight screen fatigue. After that 5 minutes, back to another Pomodoro. So it's kind of like in training, right? It's 25 minutes work, 5 minutes rest, repeat until you're done, or for 2 hours. And I'll plug into some like binaural beats, or I'll plug into something that, you know, some music that doesn't have lyrics, like some film scores or something like that. And then I just work through what I've got to work through, knowing full well I'm going to get that 5 minutes. And if at the end of this hour or 2 hour block I've allotted myself, I'm not done, then that's fine. Like, I don't put any pressure on myself, and, you know, unless it's deadline day, but I try and stay ahead of that a little bit. I don't put pressure on myself, because I feel like the last thing I want to do specific to writing is be like, that'll do. Like, I genuinely care about getting the right tone and the right message across. And I think you can tell in other people's work when it's not necessarily slapdash, but they don't think that the language is important, and they don't think that writing is important. I think particularly in this day and age, it's so easy to convey things through other mediums that people let that slip. But I think it's key to remember that we still assimilate like a good chunk of our information through reading. And for me, the ability to communicate via writing it's one hell of a skill to have, and it's one hell of a kind of detriment to you if you don't have that. Does that make sense? And
yeah, for
whether
sure.
that's professionally or personally or whatever, to be able to express and articulate yourself through writing, I think is something, you know, we're all taught it at school as well. So really none of us have an excuse. It's just that it's boring at school. you know,
when you do those 25-minute 25 on 25 off type thing, are you picking one subject matter? Like, is it for one piece, or do you sometimes divide it out? And do you plan that ahead, or just start writing whatever comes to head?
Yeah, I will focus on whatever I've got to hand, you know. So whatever project I'm working on, that's what I'll go at, and I'll try and be kind of single-mindedly focused just on that for that 25 minutes. That's the idea. Is I'm kind of saying, imagine in a workout, it's 25-minute AMRAP, and it's pull-ups and push-ups. You're not going to go midway through that AMRAP. Your idea here is to accrue as many push-ups and pull-ups as you can. You wouldn't go and start doing double unders, would you, between sets? Because those scores aren't going on the board. It's just your push-ups and pull-ups. And I guess I kind of think of it like that in that analogy. It's so easy. I mean, I have a mind that is so easily distracted at times. And shifting from one thing to another I find can really slow you down and really grind your gears when you're kind of single-mindedly focused on one thing at a time, I feel like that's when our best work comes out. And by using that Pomodoro, that 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, I find like you're almost giving yourself permission to be very single-minded, because you know that in 25 minutes time, you're going to stop. And 25 minutes is, in the scale of our lives, in the scheme of things, you know, even if unless it's an emergency, even if your phone rings, nobody's going to be too bothered if you take 25 minutes and then you call them back. Sorry, I missed your call. It's 25 minutes. It's not a huge deal. It's a small enough period of time to, for me, to completely give yourself over to a task. And after that 5 minutes, you have your rest and you think, you know, do I want to switch gears or do I want to get back into this? And that for me is that single-mindedness and giving yourself permission to just give over to that for that short period of time makes a huge difference.
Love it,
rather
man.
than kind of being scattered.
This is just like we talked about at the start of the podcast. I never know. I always pick up something, and it's always like not the realm that I thought that the interview or the talk would go. That's what I love about shooting this podcast. I hope you get the same thing from it when you do yours. So then lastly, you have trained, I've seen in your Instagram, you have built some of the most unique things that I've ever seen to like make squat racks off the side of like a hippie van. Basically, I've seen that farm that you work out on. Where does all this stuff come from? And what's one of the most funny, and you worked out in some of the weird spots, like outside of a hotel room, like in the parking lot. You got to have some pretty funny things that have happened, or people just stopping to look at you like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
I think this is something I get, like a comment I receive like all the time is like, I'd be too embarrassed or I'd be too worried about what people would think. And the thing I always say is that in like X amount, you know, however many years of doing this, like traveling circus show of training, I've never had anything but, with very few exceptions, I've never had anything but positive relationships with people who have been interested in what I'm doing. There's been a few times where you kind of, it's like, you know, when you're a kid and you're a skateboarder or whatever, there's people that want to move you on. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm not a kid anymore. You know, I was mid-20s when I started this stuff, and I'm in my 30s now. So people are a lot more kind of happy to just let you do your thing. Maybe they think they just don't want to talk to you, or that's not a guy I want to have a conversation with. But generally speaking, I've had people, you know, there might be a few of us. I work with my brothers. I'm very fortunate enough to work with my brothers, and we train together occasionally. And sometimes we've stayed in hotels, and perhaps they've had a pub adjacent, you know, a bar adjacent, and we're in the car park, and we've got like a rig. We built a rig that attaches to the side of the work van, and that was when I did my first CrossFit comp, and I was like, I need a rack to squat out of. So in fact, it was a couple of days after we'd done a 170-mile relay race, and I was like, right, I'm not doing any more endurance for a while. I'm just hitting my training. My feet were so messed up, like I could barely walk, and I'm like, I'm not doing any more running. And we went and bought some like box section and pull-up bar and bits like that one evening after work, and then the next day at lunchtime on this job we were doing, it's like this political conference we were doing, we retrofitted it, or just took the tools out of the van and just retrofitted it onto the side of the van at lunchtime. And but I've never had anything but people come over and say, like, you know, ask what you're doing, and then nothing but really like admiration from people. I think people get this idea that people are going to watch them and think like, oh, what are those freaks doing? But I've never encountered anything other than people being kind of admiring what you're doing and saying, like, you're asking questions and being curious. And I would advise anyone, particularly at the moment, you know, we're kind of in winter, but gyms aren't open, and you might be put off from maybe, let's say you've got a big tractor tire and you want to flip tire outdoors, but you're worried what your neighbors might think. I'd pretty much put my name to the fact that most of them, first of all, will just curtain twitch. Then they'll come out and ask what you're doing. And then I'd imagine for most people, within a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you'll have a community of people flipping that tire with you.
Yeah, that's how the garage gym started right there. It's
Yeah,
exactly
exactly.
it. They thought I was the crazy guy that never wore a shirt and did all these wild things in my backyard. And then all of a sudden there's like 30 of us. You know, it's
I
pretty
think
funny.
there's an inherent there's kind of an inherent purity to self-improvement. I think that there's no drawback to, you see, so unless you're an asshole, you're not going to look at someone trying to be better and think, oh, fuck that guy. Whereas most people are drawn to it. Most people are like, well, how can I get involved? How can I bet on myself? And that's all I've been all over the country, and I've trained in some real weird, like, car park spots. Like, I've been and surrounded by different demographics of people, and I've never encountered anything other than people coming over and saying like, oh, is that heavy? Can I try and lift that? Or asking what we're doing and asking for advice and being like, oh, what can I do? I've got this at home. What can I do? I would say that if you're to and fro with the idea of just, getting outside, taking your dumbbells to the park, whatever it is you can do under whatever current legislation we're under at the moment, just do it, and don't worry about if you are at all worried about what other people think. Know that it's probably going to be nothing but positive thoughts and like thoughts of admiration towards you.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And I think people are thinking the negative, but most people either don't care at all, like they don't care either way. I mean, that guy's working on the parking lot. Well, I'm going to continue on my day. Or they're going to be like, wow, man, that guy's really dedicated. They're not going to say, that guy's, and you know what? The ones that do are the write-offs anyway. Cause like, if there's anything I tell my boys, like if I don't, they're 7-5, so I don't say exactly this, but if one lesson I want to be home is what you just said, like, don't be an asshole. That's it. And if you are, you're a write-off, and who cares what those people think? So anyways, that was an awesome episode, man. I really loved having you on here. What, how can people get a hold of you? What, just throw those out. They'll be in the show notes anyway, but.
Yeah, just Instagram. I'm theandrew.tracy. And you can, once you're there, you can find everything through there, I guess. Awesome. Yeah, with a little bit of browsing. Seriously, thank you very much for having me on today. I massively appreciate being asked.
Awesome, man. Great episode. Everybody listening, do one thing today to make yourself better. Take the advice, Andrew, and just, go out for a 2-minute walk. Do whatever you got to do. Just one thing that's going to improve yourself today.
Now's the time to do more and be more.